And friends, if I look at the Bible, we come to realize that this thing where we are shifting to a point whereby it is equally important and even more important, the huddles with the Pinnacle Life, is nothing new. This is actually not new. Because if we look at the Bible, we realize church existed in huddles before they existed in Pinnacle Lives in church history. They gathered in circles before they gathered in rows in history. There were no church buildings when there were already small groups gathering in houses in history. For the first 300 years, the emphasis of the church was seen, the experience of the church was seen inside huddles, not in gatherings, huge gatherings. That's why in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 19, we have the huddle guides being mentioned. Verse 19, Aquila and Priscilla, they greet you warmly in the Lord. And then it says this, so does the church that meets where? In their house, at their house. They were the huddle guides. In Romans 16, verse 5, referring to Aquila and Priscilla, greet also the church that meets in the house of Aquila and Priscilla. In verse 23, there was a host in the house helping the guides. His name was Gaius. Gaius, whose hospitality I and the whole church here enjoy, sends you his greetings. We see this everywhere in the Bible. Colossians 4:15, give my greetings to the brothers and sisters at Laodicea and to Nympha. That's the name of the huddle guide of this small group. And the church in her house. And friends, I'd like us to look into this now because this is the pivot that we want to do. Why is life stronger when connections are deeper? Well, number one, it's because we were created together. We become more human. We become more true to why we were created. There's a guy I was reading, and his name is Varun Soni, Dean of Religious Life at USC. He wrote an article at LA Times entitled, There's a Loneliness Crisis on College Campuses. Google it, read it if you like. Talks about the new epidemic happening not only in campuses but in the entire city as well. He wrote about the loneliness at USC campus, but also the loneliness permeating in the society. Listen to this. Listen to what he said. I never got, this is the dean, Varun Soni is the dean of religious life at USC. And he said this, I never got the question in my first 5 years at USC that I now get almost daily from students. So in his first 5 years, this question doesn't pop up. Maybe before the digital world, people were more connected. But now that we are in the digital world, something happened to our connections. They're all just shallow. They're wide, but not that deep. And he said this, the question that is not oftentimes, but daily asked to him by the students, how do I make friends? Students may have thousands of friends online, but few in real life. They may be experts at talking with their thumbs, but not so much with their tongues. As a result, listen to this, many feel as though they do not have a tribe. They don't have a sense of belonging. Listen to this. They feel disconnected, listen to this, from what it means to be human. I'd like to repeat that. When we are not connected with others, we feel disconnected with what it means to be human. In the same article, he was saying, there seems to be a deeper connection that existed in the digital world. That's why they're craving for it. Generation Z statistically is more anxious than any generation before it. Listen to this. Students today exhibits the same level of stress and anxiety that psychiatric patients did in the 1950s. Can I repeat that? Students today exhibit the same level of stress and anxiety that psychiatric patients did in the 1950s. Depression rates are higher than ever before. And we wonder why. And that article points to one thing. Because connections are not deep. That's why loneliness is permeating, causing mental health. Because whatever struggle we have exponentially multiplies when we struggle alone. Coach Peace last week talked about this, or two weeks ago. In the U.S., the national rate of anxiety tripled in the second quarter compared to the same period in 2019. And depression almost quadrupled from CDC. This is from CDC. CDC found that more people are dying of suicide and overdose in 2020 than they are dying of COVID-19. The greater pandemic is mental and emotional health. Anxiety, depression, loneliness. Why? Because we are becoming less true to what we are. We were meant to be connected. We were created to be that way. God said it in the scriptures, in the first chapter, in the first book of the holy book, Genesis 2:18. It was spelled out so clearly. The Lord God said, "It is not good for man to be alone." Now, listen to the explanation of John Ortberg. Very important. What is striking is that this statement, the fall has not yet occurred when that statement was given. It is not good for a man to be alone. There was no sin, there's no obedience, nothing to mar the relationship between God and man. God and man, perfect relationship. The human being was in a state of perfect intimacy with God. Each day he and God speaks with each other, is filled with closeness and joy. He walks with God in the garden in the cool of the day. He is known and loved to the very core of his being by his Creator. Yet the word God used to describe him, what's the word that God used to describe a man that has not fallen to sin or the perfect relationship with God? The word was, he's alone. And God said, and that's not good. It's not good for man to be alone. And you wonder, really? Man can be so close to God, so perfect in relationship, and yet feel alone? Yes. Why? Because you were not meant to only relate with God. Bill Willis said this: sometimes when people feel lonely, we tell them not to expect too much from human relationships. That there is inside every human being a God-shaped void that no person can fill, and that is true. And one of the reasons sometimes people feel lonely is because they're surrounded with the human beings, but there is a God void inside that no human can fill. That was said by Blaise Pascal. But this thing is also true. Listen to this. But apparently, according to the writer of Genesis, God also creates inside this man a kind of human-shaped void that God Himself deliberately decided not to fill. No substitute will fill this need in you for human relationships. Not money, not achievement, not business, not books, not even God Himself. Because He deliberately decided not to do that. Even though this man was in a state of sinless perfection, he was alone. And that was not God. Why? Because you and I were created in the image of God. And God is one person, one God in three persons. Let us make man according to our image. Our God, in His very essence, is a community God, a social being. And friends, this is the reason why all the more it is so important for us to understand that, we need to be connected, but we need to do a pivot in our relationships. That's where the huddle is important. Listen to this. What we need are not many connections that are shallow. What we need are deep connections. Few but deep connections. Not many but shallow, but few and deep. And that's the reason why we need to shift from accidental relationships to intentional relationships. We need to shift from just merely random when I have time, when I feel like it, when we get to meet accidentally, from random relationships to committed relationships. And where does that happen? It happens in huddles. And this is the reason why we're saying we need to connect so that we could have our real essence as human beings be realized to the utmost. That's the only time that we don't feel being alone. And friends, I would like to challenge us to move towards that direction in our perception of huddle, in our view of what our small group is.
Hello everyone, thank you for watching our video. Make sure you check out the description box below for all of our discussion questions, and make sure to like, subscribe, and share all of our videos in our channel with your family and friends. Thank you again for watching.